right, now for the man who needs no introduction, but I'm going to give one anyway. He has built an independent media platform that has inspired millions. He has devoted his life to fighting for justice. He works tirelessly for human rights. He is relentless. He is a fighter. He insists on policy over party, people over profit, and planet over politics. His wife is a saint. His children are ridiculously adorable. And he has called on all of us today to stand with him and show the Democratic Party what it looks like to fight. Show the Democratic Party what it looks like to unite and what it looks like to resist. You are the revolution. We are the revolution. And now, here to talk with you today about how we can learn from our experiences in 2016 and prepare for 2020, please welcome Cenk Uygur.
So it's just wonderful to see you guys here. I've had folks tell me that this is the largest crowd in Des Moines, Iowa today with all of the different presidential candidates running around. You're still the biggest crowd here. The speech and the rally here today is called Revolution Rally, and there's a reason for that, because there's a revolution going on in this country. And it's a progressive revolution, and it has been putting forward amazing people, and a lot of you got those folks elected. So now, we can begin the fiery part of the speech. Because now I'm going to talk about our opponents and what we're going to do about it. So, unfortunately, we do have a lot of opponents. So, we've got the Republicans, of course. But we also have the corporate Democrats. And of course, and this is unfortunate, and I wish it weren't the case, but it's true, the mainstream media. But let's talk about the things that unfortunately are not as obvious to everyone else in the country, and it's partly because of the media blockade. So they say, well, if we just get rid of Trump, then everything would be great. But as Naomi Klein said on the Young Turks, if we get rid of Trump, we go back to a situation that was so bad that it created Trump. And so that is not going to work for any of us. So what the mainstream media doesn't understand, and a lot of the corporate Democrats, Pelosi, Schumer, and all the rest of them, is that wages have not gone up in 40 years. Adjusted for inflation, they have not gone up at all. Your productivity as Americans has gone up substantially. You've done a wonderful job. You're working so hard, and now most families have two people working at them, working overtime, and you still can't get your wages to go up. And people keep scratching their heads like, oh, gee, I wonder why that's the case. The Federal Reserve just came out and said, well, you know, we've got almost full employment, and we just gave $2 trillion in taxes to corporations, so it's weird that wages aren't going up. No, it's not weird. It's because of corporate control. They've taken over the government completely. And yet, is anyone talking about that in the media? Are they saying, oh my God, we're in an emergency, my God? Do you know that if you take the difference between your productivity over the last 40 years and the wages that you have, so productivity is sky high and the wages have flatlined, the difference between those two curves, according to the economists, have cost the average American worker, and this is a stunning fact, $17,000 a year every year. So if your wages had kept up with your productivity and how hard you're working in America, you'd all make $17,000 more per year on average. That's amazing. That's an emergency. That's a dire situation. That's why we got Trump, because as a voter in Western Virginia told one of our reporters during the 2016 election, he said he at least had the decency to lie to us. And he said things were going to get better. He said we were going to get higher wages. What do the corporate Democrats always tell you? No. Status quo is wonderful. Let's do a middle ground approach. So we are not in the business of the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. And this rally is all about the fierce urgency of now. So you guys are the vanguard of that progressive army that we need to change the course of not only this election, but honestly the course of history in this country. And I believe that you can do that. But how are you going to do that? So let me clarify here. In fact, there's two main things that we're going to ask you guys. The first is clarity. So a lot of the media seem to be confused about what a progressive is. They're calling Joe Biden progressive. Now, I was talking to somebody at the airport the other day, and this, look, I got no beef with her personally, and these are all fine folks, but they said Joy Reid's a progressive. Well, she's got a funny way of showing it, okay? And so, well, okay, if everybody can call themselves a progressive, then they're gonna muddy the waters. Now, why do they wanna do that? Because the reality is they know that being a progressive is actually incredibly popular. But do they actually wanna do the things that make them progressive? No, no they don't. So we are going to bring clarity to this race. We're gonna ask people, are you with us or are you against us? And so the media will hate that. They'll say, oh my God, that doesn't sound right. Are you with us or against us? Well, God damn it, we're in a primary. I gotta know if you're with me or if you're against me. They say, why don't you just back all the Democrats? They're on your team. Really? They got a funny way of showing it. Nancy Pelosi sent her top advisor to go tell the health insurance industry, don't worry about a thing, we're never gonna do Medicare for all. How in the world is she on my team? Is she on your team? Nancy, are you listening? Chuck Schumer, when you don't back any of the progressive policies, is he on your team, guys? All right, and that leads me to the second point that we're gonna talk about today. We're gonna fight, and we're gonna fight for our positions, and you guys are gonna make sure that they get passed. We're not in the business of personalities and vanity and ego. We have to deliver for the American people. If we don't get those policies passed, all this was for nothing. So, you know, sometimes they'll say, oh, you guys are Bernie bros, or hey, Cenk, you're biased towards Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or some of the other progressive candidates. Okay, now, think about it. Why? Why would we be biased in favor of Bernie Sanders? Now, here's a guy who's 77 years old, barely combs his hair, and somehow they think that all of us, irrationally, out of nowhere, decided, yeah, let's go with that guy, right? What? Thank you. The policies. The policies. That's why we like him. That's why we like Elizabeth Warren. It's policy after policy after policy, right? It's not complicated. And to the rest of the media, do your goddamn jobs. They got 1,000 negative articles about Bernie Sanders, and they got 1,000 anchors speaking against Bernie Sanders on TV 24/7. And they keep scratching their heads going, I don't know why anybody likes him. Then ask somebody, right? We got a room full of people here. Just pull one aside and ask them. And they're all gonna tell you the same thing. Bernie Sanders is not our uncle. Elizabeth Warren's not our aunt. We're not related to them. We picked them not because we think they have a nice smile or they're likable. We picked them because they fight for us. All right, I'm gonna break out the polls here because, they say, well, no, but guys, they're radical left. Bernie's radical left. All right, well, keep that thought in mind, Apparently we're all radical left, right? You know, Donald Trump and his team are not the only people doing alternative facts because the mainstream media also does alternative facts. So they say that we're radical left and that the country is center right. So I guess it's my turn to educate them. And when I say things like that, they say, oh my God, you progressives, oh, you know, you're always trying to beat us up and oh, all this talk about like you're right. You guys don't understand, everybody's playing three-dimensional chess in Washington. Yeah, how's that working out for us? Is part of the three-dimensional chess that your wages don't go up for 40 years? No, they're screwing us. They're absolutely positively screwing us, and I'll tell you how throughout the speech. But now, let's go to find out where the country is. Is it center right? Is it center left? Or maybe radical left? Let's find out. Turns out, I'm gonna read you poll after poll here. 70% of Americans support Medicare for all. Even 52% of Republicans support Medicare for all. So let me ask the media, is 70% of the country radical left? Because if they are, great. So when you say, Bernie Sanders, he's radical left, only 70% of the country agrees with him. Do you say that? No, you don't, you lie. You say that he's fringe, when in reality, 70% of the country agrees with him. That's not anywhere near the last poll. By the way, whenever they find a poll that they like, they say, oh my God, Joe Biden's leading. That's a great poll, don't ever question that poll. Okay, fine, no problem, I like polls. You say, hey, Medicare for all polls at 70%. No, that poll can't be true. That poll can't be true, right? Because no one I know likes Medicare for all. All the millionaires I know don't like it. Okay, so what do? They commission a new poll and if you don't know this in politics, these are called push polls. When you're trying to do propaganda, and you disguise it in the form of a poll. So then they said, okay, now would you be in favor of Medicare for all if we told you it's gonna take your private insurance away from you? Now, what they didn't say in the poll is, it would replace it with better insurance. Now, that's a push poll. That is a purposely misleading poll. And everybody in the press is like, nope, 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 I've got a new poll. I got a new poll where we lied to them and pretended that you were going to lose your private insurance, and we didn't tell them that you were going to get better insurance in the meanwhile. All of a sudden, you don't like polls, and you want to mislead people. And then you wonder why we think you have a bias. We don't have a bias. We have a perspective. We say, yes, we're progressive and we're proud, right? That's why the Young Turks calls itself the home of progressives. We never hide that, but we don't play around with the facts. But the establishment media plays around with the facts all the time. If they get a poll that actually helps the American people, they say, nope, I don't believe it. I'm going to do a push poll instead. That is purposely misleading. That is establishment bias 101. All right, how about Green New Deal? Before they said whether it was a Republican, or a Democratic proposal, it polled at over 80%. Including 64% of Republicans wanted it. So is 80% of the country radical left? Is 64% of Republicans radical left? So can you begin to see the lies? So I'm going to keep going because I got a lot of these. 82% of Americans think wealthy people have too much power and influence in Washington. 69% think large businesses have too much. When do you hear that on TV? You never hear that. So is 82% of the country radical left? 59% of Americans and 43% of Republicans think corporations make too much profit. If Bernie Sanders doesn't even say this, if Bernie Sanders said 59% of corporations make too much profit, they'd go nuts. They'd say, oh my God, this socialist, Marxist, communist Venezuelan says that corporations make too much profit. What does that mean, too much profit? They're going to take our beloved corporations' profit away. 59% of the country agrees with that. So is 59% of the country what the media would call radical left? If that's true, that's wonderful. Then tell the American people you are radical left. Every one of these is backed up. Reuters Ipsos poll, and I can give you the polling on every single one of these. 76% of Americans believe the wealthiest Americans should pay higher taxes. Higher taxes. Now, guys, think about that. We got a country where 3/4 of the American people say, for God's sake, raise taxes on the rich. And what do instead? They do the exact opposite. Exact opposite. They cut taxes on the rich. Does that look like a democracy to you? No, they're robbing us. They're absolutely, positively robbing us. And what does the mainstream media do? Yes, sir, absolutely, sir. Did they ever once ask, how are you going to pay for that? $2 trillion to the rich and to multinational corporations. And they never asked, how are you going to pay for that? They never said, hey, wait a minute. This is way outside the mainstream of Americans. 3/4 of Americans think not only that you shouldn't cut taxes, that you should raise taxes on the rich. They never said that. And then they turn around and when we point that out, they act all aggrieved. Oh my God, you progressives. Oh, you're pressuring us too much. You know what we're going to do? We're going to shut out your message. Yeah, I know you've been doing that anyway. It's not like that's anything new. So 87% of Americans want to preserve Social Security for future generations, even if it means increasing taxes paid by wealthier Americans. You know what they say to that? They say, oh, that's populism. That would be doing what the American people want. Yeah, that's called a democracy. If 87% of Americans want something in a so-called democracy, you should think about giving it to them. But when any politician says, I'm going to do that, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, or otherwise, what do they say? Radicals! Radicals! They believe what 87% of the country believes. No, guys, you have to understand something because they're doing mass brainwashing. And it's almost a form of torture, where they keep telling you things that are not true are true. And they keep telling you you're the crazy ones. They tell 87% of the country, no, you're crazy. Well, your position is illegitimate. Your position is radical. Your position is fringe. Your position is populist. And it's unacceptable and undoable. Whenever they want to spend money on the rich, though, all of a sudden, very doable. Very, very doable. So 78% of voters say they would favor a comprehensive 12-week national paid family and medical leave law, including 66% of Republicans. And we don't have it. 67% of Americans think same-sex marriage are legally valid, including 44% of Republicans. We just had Pride Day here in Iowa. %89 of voters support making quality early education for children from birth through age 5, including child care, more affordable. 82% of Republicans agree. Do we have quality early education from birth to age 5? No. 89% is not good enough in a democracy. Why? Because the donors own them. They own them. You know, there's a word for that when a donor comes and gives you a check, and then you do what they tell you. See, you guys are better journalists than everyone else on TV. Everybody knows that's called a bribe. That's called a bribe. Call it what it is. That's called corruption. Call it what it is. Bill Clinton, in his first presidential run, had a sign up on this wall, and to focus all of his campaign, and it was supposed to synthesize what they should focus on. And it just said, it's the economy, stupid, right? Now, the sign should say, it's the corruption, stupid. I can't believe that it doesn't occur to the media that 89% of Americans wanting something and them not getting it is problematic. They're like, oh, that's great, status quo is wonderful, you don't get anything you want. All right, we're gonna keep going, look at this. Speaking of corruption, 78% of Americans believe the world's climate is undergoing a change that is causing more extreme weather patterns and sea levels rise, including 64% of Republicans. So, are we doing anything about that? Nope. Why? Because ExxonMobil is cutting a check to all the congressmen and all the senators. And then the media pretends, oh, the honorable gentleman from Kentucky and the honorable gentleman from Connecticut, they don't agree. No, there's no agreeing or not agreeing. They get a check and they do it as they are told. When you have, in a democracy, if you actually wanted voters, you would do what 78% of voters want. But they don't do that because they work for ExxonMobil and they don't work for us. I'm not anywhere near done. 57% of Americans believe police officers generally treat blacks and other minorities different than they treat whites. Yet Fox News starts a false debate about whether Black Lives Matter are the radicals, and they even called them terrorists, right? And it's so the rest of the media goes along with it. Instead of trying to figure out how do we stop our police, who are supposed to serve and protect us, from killing innocent, unarmed black men, instead of having that conversation and that debate, we turn around and have a debate about whether Black Lives Matter chanted the wrong thing. That's insanity. That's insanity. Are you ever going to listen to the American people? So, 68% of Americans believe that the country's openness, now, you want to talk about immigration, right? They say, well, immigration, the country's very against immigration. That's why Donald Trump won. Have you ever read a goddamn poll? 68% of Americans, including 48% of Republicans, believe the country's openness to people from around the world is, quote, essential to who we are as a nation. Just 29% say that if America is too open to people from all over the world, we risk losing our identity as a nation. That is Donald Trump's position, that is Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingram's position. And it is deeply, deeply unpopular. But what do you hear in the media? It makes it sound like, well, the country's against immigrants, what are we gonna do? We gotta do something, right? No, the country's massively in favor of immigrants. I can go on, I got more polls on immigrants, but you get the point. I wanna move on to, I gotta give you this one on Dreamers. 76% of registered voters, including 69% of Republicans, support allowing undocumented immigrants brought to the country as children, dreamers, to stay in the country, okay? Corporate Democrats, what are you doing? That's 3/4 of the country. Nancy Pelosi tells me that she's a master legislator. Hey, master legislator, 76% of the country, including 7 out of 10 Republicans, say the dreamers should be allowed to stay. And you can't get it passed? And you can't get it passed. That's so sad. And okay, now they finally put together a package and got it passed in the House after all these years. Then they go over to the Senate, and of course, what do the Democrats immediately do? Preemptive surrender. Oh, well, the Republicans control the Senate, I guess we're gonna give up. No, then you go on TV and you say, God damn it, the Republicans are against 3/4 of Americans and even 70% of their own voters. Why does Mitch McConnell hate his own voters? It's called fighting. You fight. If you fight, you win. We have the whole country behind us. They're getting rid of abortion all throughout the country, in Alabama and Ohio and all these different states, right? Missouri, absolutely. 71% of Americans, including 50% of Republicans, oppose overturning Roe versus Wade. There it is again. You see the same number over and over and over again. At least 70% of the country, 7 out of 10 people are on our side, yet we keep losing. Why? Because of the corruption, and then the media saying, nope, it's a center-right country. Look at all these numbers. Which journalist would look at all these numbers and then declare that the country is center-right? Where does the money in corruption go? So they pour all the money to the politicians in campaign donations and independent expenditures. Last cycle, I think they spent at least $6 billion. You know where the great majority of that went? TV advertising. And then all of a sudden, TV says, what corruption? I don't see any corruption. No, I don't see it. What progressives? I don't see any progressives. I'm not going to put any progressives on air. I'm not going to let you defend yourself. I'm going to have every one of my anchors go and say that Bernie's a radical, that progressives are radicals, and I'm going to pretend the country's not on the left. I'm going to pretend it's on the right. You know that 97% of Americans want federal background checks on guns? By the way, including 77% of gun owners, okay? Now I'm going to criticize some of my colleagues on the left and progressive groups. Guys, I love you, but you're misunderstanding politics. They keep talking about persuasion. What difference would it make if we had 98% of the country rather than 97% of the country? It isn't about persuasion. It's about the corruption. And so the 97%, we got it. We got it. In no sane democracy would you not be able to pass a law that 97% of Americans agree with. The only reason we can't pass it is because all the Republican legislators are taking a check from the NRA. And so the problem isn't persuasion. The problem is bribery. So I'm going to give you one last poll here, and that is, do you think money in politics is causing the dysfunction in our political system? Well, you know, I don't know if we have the whole country on our side on that one, because only 96% said yes. Well, by the way, to be fair, I don't know if we got the whole Republican Party on our side, because you know Nancy Pelosi always loves to ask permission from the Republicans before she does anything. So, Speaker Pelosi, I got great news for you. You have permission. 96% of Republicans also agree. Okay. The media gets mad at me when I criticize them. 96% of Americans believe that corruption is the #1 problem, and you guys never talk about it. And by the way, it's not just the cable news guys. Washington Post, New York Times loves talking about the right wing. Oh, they're so intellectual, and they've got nerd avant-garde or whatever the hell they call it, and they legitimize and platform all these monstrous right-wingers. Almost no articles ever about progressives, almost never a positive article about any progressive candidate, and then when they're discussing politics, apparently no one on staff understands politics, because they're like, well, Orrin Hatch thinks this, and Mitt Romney now replaced him, and he thinks that, and then Mitch McConnell thinks. They don't think anything. They get a check, and they do as they are told, and the whole country believes it. The only people left not believing it is the media. So what do they focus on instead? They say, well, the reason Joe Biden's leading and why he's a good candidate is because he's likable. Well, I know you like him because you like the status quo, and he says, trust me, I ain't gonna do a goddamn thing for 4 years. So he's gonna maintain the status quo, and that's why you find him likable. I know he has a nice smile. Who cares? Who cares about his goddamn smile? Are you kidding me? Our lives are on the line. If you got a kid who is sick and you don't have insurance, if he has cancer, we as a society have decided we're going to let him die. Isn't that unbelievable? Over 30 million people in this country don't have health insurance. If their kid sprains their ankle, yeah, you can take them to the emergency room. But if they have cancer, the emergency room isn't going to help them. And as a society, we've become so monstrous that we say, let him die. And then the media tells me about Joe Biden's goddamn smile? That's your political analysis? And then you wonder why we're frustrated with you. So, look, here's what Joe Biden did. He voted for the Iraq War, and that killed nearly 1 million innocent Iraqis, let alone all of our boys that we sent over there. That thousands of Americans died, tens of thousands got injured. We wasted trillions of dollars there. Did you find that likable? No. I didn't find it likable either. The '94 crime bill that he said he was so proud to support, that led to the unjust imprisonment of millions of Americans. Did you find that likable? No. He says, well, look, I've been working with Republicans on the Hyde Amendment, and I think that it's a good idea, and so what does that do? That denies poor and middle-class women the same reproductive rights as wealthy women. Do you find that likable? No. And then when he sees, oh, I'm going to lose some, you know why he changed his mind? Again, TV never talks about it. You know why he changed his mind? He got calls from donors, and they said, hey, wait a minute. I don't like the Hyde Amendment. And all of a sudden, Joe comes out the next day, and for political expediency, he changes his position on the Hyde Amendment. Do you find that likable? No. And when he does that, he says, no, it's okay. Now I'm on the right side of the issue. Do you believe him? No. Do you think when he goes into office that he isn't going to immediately brag about how he compromised with Mitch McConnell and kept the Hyde Amendment? You know he's going to do that. Everybody knows that. The media knows that. Joe Biden knows that. But they keep on lying to you. And speaking of which, Joe Biden keeps talking about how proud he is to work with other Republicans, including, and he said this, Dick Cheney. Do you find that likable? The media says Bernie is unlikable. I think when you have 3/4 of the country agreeing with you, you might be likable. So when progressives talk about Green New Deal or Medicare for all or college for all, any of those topics, you know what the media says in unison. How are you going to pay for that, right? So interesting question, and they think they're so sophisticated when they think, oh, did you know that you have to actually pay for it? Ooh, that's some three-dimensional chess going on there. I didn't see that coming. They treat us like children, nonstop patronizing towards progressives. Okay, then let me return the favor. So when they pass the $2 trillion in tax cuts, did you ever ask, how are you going to pay for that? No, you never asked that. Wait, I thought you were sophisticated. And so now that costs us $2 trillion. They said it was going to increase wages. Has it increased wages? No. Not 1 cent. Adjusted for inflation, wages have not gone up. So what did the corporations do? What they always do. They maximize profit. They have to. By law, they have to maximize profit. So they took all of the proceeds. They took all of it, right? But the very sophisticated anchors on TV, the very sophisticated reporters at the New York Times go, oh, golly gee, that's normal. That's normal. But if you dare try to help any average American, how are you going to pay for that, right? So I have an idea. When we get in office, how about that $2 trillion that you gave away and got nothing for? How about we take it back? You know what? You know what? Let's say it together. Say it with me. Give it back. Give it back. Give it back. I'll tell you what you just did. You just scared the bejesus out of them. Because when they see a room full of Americans chanting, give it back, they go, wait a minute, that's my precious tax cuts? Tell everyone we own that they are to fight against that tooth and nail. But we gave you the $2 trillion and we got nothing in return. So we're going to take that and we're going to take more. They say, well, that sounds like populism. You're goddamn right it's populism. Well, that sounds like you want to do what 3/4 of Americans want to do. Goddamn right I do. Hey, where do we go to get our $5 trillion back for the Iraq and Afghanistan wars? $5 trillion. Where do we go to get that back? Now, so unfortunately, we can't get that back. But I do want to ask the media, college for all that you say is unaffordable. Do you know what percentage, and I'd love to quiz them on the spot, but they'd say it's a gotcha question. What percentage of the Iraq war is college for all? So you tell me college for all, we can't afford it. So it must be twice as large as the cost of the Iraq war, maybe 10 times as large as the cost of the Iraq war, because we can't afford it and we afforded the Iraq war, right? No, it's 5% of the cost of the Iraq war, just 5%. But we can't afford the American dream for our kids and for your kids, but we can afford spending 20 times that for a senseless war that only Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing and the oil companies profited from. It is sick. It is absolutely sick. So, and look, there's so many more topics, but I want us to focus here. And so I'm going to get to one of the things that we want to do for clarity here, okay? So, look, everybody says they're progressive. No one ever challenges them on it. So, and the media is always talking about, oh, you progressives have litmus tests. But in reality, we haven't. So, for example, the Just Democrats only had one litmus test, and that was corporate PAC money. So if you take corporate PAC money, well, you don't need our money, and you don't need our time, and you don't need our vote. You made your bed, and you sleep in it, okay? You're in bed with the corporations. Go ahead and piss off, okay? So I had a reporter once say to me incredulously, like, is that a litmus test? Goddamn right it is. That's right. It is a litmus test. 93% of Americans believe that, I said there was going to be no more polls. I got one last one. 93% of Americans say that the politician work for their donors and not for their voters. And it makes sense. If you take money and your check is signed by corporations, of course you're going to work for them. Yet the geniuses in Washington and the geniuses on TV and the geniuses in the New York Times still haven't been able to figure that out. That's just a big, giant mystery. You guys, everyone in this room is a better journalist than them because you figured it out and they still have, oh, I wonder how politics works. So let's get some clarity. Look, I'd love to have clarity on all the issues, but if we do that, the list is going to be too large. So unfortunately, we had to leave out the social issues, even though they are so monumentally important. If we have a progressive president, they should end private prisons on day one. No sane democracy would allow for corporations to make money off of imprisoning their fellow citizens. That would never be allowed. And the list is so long. Dreamers should be on day one. How could you not do that? It's so easy. Criminal justice reform, and the list goes on. Legalizing marijuana, day one. Foreign policy, end the aggressive wars, all the offensive wars. We're sick of it. Bring them home. Bring the troops home. Bring them home. Bring them home. Bring them home. Bring them home. Why the hell are we helping Saudi Arabia, a fundamentalist government, commit massacre after massacre in Yemen? What kind of morality is that? And then they tell me the Republicans are a party of family values. 85,000 kids starved to death in Yemen, and we helped make that happen. That's not my values. Is that your values? Bring them home. But we have a new litmus test. So Shutter Media, oh my God, litmus test. And it doesn't even include any of those monumentally important topics. It is just on economics, and it's so simple, and it's something that every American, in the polling that I just read to you, overwhelmingly agrees with. It's not too much to ask for. So what is it? Let me unveil it for you guys. So number one in our progressive economic pledge is higher wages. The media tells me, oh, the stock market's doing great. We got nothing to worry about. Yeah, but you don't have your money in the stock market. The bottom 90%, even look at the framing of that, the bottom 90%, right, have almost no money in the stock market. And so they say, well, I don't know, I'm doing great. No, we're not doing great. 40 goddamn years of stagnant wages. So what do we want? $15 minimum wage. By the way, Nancy Pelosi said that she was going to pass that in the first 100 hours. All right, here we are. How many months later? Nearly 6 months later. We still don't have it. So why don't we have it when, number one, it's super simple in a Congress that is now, in a House that is overwhelmingly Democratic, and number two, you promised it. I mean, you don't even promise the other progressive policy positions, but this one you pretended you were in favor of. Why don't we have it? She says, well, some of the more conservative Democrats don't want it. Okay. So, all right, but here's the thing I don't understand. Why do you give a crap? Vote on it! Vote on it! Vote on it! Okay? So, well, the sophisticated three-dimensional chess players in Washington say, well, then that would expose the conservative Democrats to the wrath of their voters. Exactly! In a democracy, you're supposed to be exposed to the wrath of your voters. And wait a minute. Conservative Democrats, if you're worried that your voters are in favor of increasing the minimum wage, then why aren't you doing it? Oh, maybe it's the goddamn donors. And then I'm supposed to respect Nancy Pelosi as a master legislator. In a House that is overwhelmingly Democratic, you can't get the simplest thing passed. You'll excuse me if I don't think you're a master legislator. So, but I'm not done, because look, minimum wage is important, but it's step one. We got the middle class. You know what helps? Collective bargaining. How are you supposed to have leverage against your employer if you're just by yourself? They're gonna mow you down. They're gonna mow you down. You've got to get together. If you don't have collective bargaining and you don't have people power, they're gonna squeeze you to the end of time. So we've got to have that. And then this is the one that is going to trip them up. And it's actually a very simple request. It's actually the most simple thing you could ask for in a democracy: to represent the average American worker rather than your corporate donors. Because that is actually the heart of the problem. If your representatives actually represented you, like, I don't know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, then they would fight for your wages instead of fighting for their corporate executives and the stock buybacks, etc. The number one reason you don't have higher wages is because they bought all of Congress. So we're going to demand that they actually represent us. Yes, their feelings will be hurt. I'm sorry, their feelings will be very hurt. I remember Barney Frank told us, hey, what do you want us to do? Take none of the banker money instead of 20%? Yes! Yes, you schmuck. If you take 20% of the banker money, you will be forever the Washington Generals to the Republicans' Harlem Globetrotters. Because you are destined to lose if they get 4 times as much money as you. This guy is bragging about how he did Wall Street regulation. He can't do math. No, we want you to take none of the bank money and actually fight for us. Plank number 2, Medicare for all. No, we're not Medicare for America, not Medicare for some, not Medicare for me but not for you, not public option. No, we didn't stutter. We didn't stutter. Medicare for all. And this is one of the most confounding ones in terms of the media. They say, well, Amy Klobuchar agrees to the public option, so I guess she's in favor of Medicare for all. No, that's the opposite. That means she's not in favor of Medicare for all. God damn it, it's not that hard. Do your job, right? And Amy Klobuchar, is it too much to ask that you support 70% of the country, let alone the Democratic Party? And you know what she says? She says, well, how are you going to pay for that? It's going to be very expensive. And so all these progressives are promising things that American people want. Okay, you should look into that, Amy. And she says, well, you know what I'm going to give you? And she said this in a town hall. She said, look under your chairs. You know what you'll find there? Nothing. Okay, great, Amy, 2 can play at that game. Look under your chair. You know what we got for you? Nothing. No votes, no donations, no volunteers. If you're not for Medicare for all, you're not on our team. And you're not a progressive. Green New Deal. Number 3, Green New Deal. So Fox News has smeared this 8 ways to Sunday. And they made up things about how they're going to ban cows. Nobody wrote that. That's a hilarious lie. But imagine how stupid the Fox News audience is. That they go, oh yeah, I bet they ban cows. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Nobody's banning cows. Nobody's banning airplanes. So since apparently corporate Democrats, Republicans, Fox News, but also the corporate media is a little slow, let's clarify. 2 things, okay? 2 fundamental parts of the Green New Deal. One is we are going to get off of fossil fuels in 10 years. And second part is we are going to create millions of jobs rebuilding the energy infrastructure of this country. That's it. That's what the Green New Deal is. So if you hear anyone lying about what the Green New Deal is, no, you tell them, look, it's very clear, okay? It's in the pledge. So now think about what a win-win that is. When Eisenhower built a highway system, the bridges, and created infrastructure in America, you know what that led to? It led us to being the #1 economy in the world. That's what made us the #1 economy. So we rebuild the energy infrastructure, and we create millions of jobs doing that. What do we have? We have more jobs. We've got a brand new infrastructure that is going to serve us for decades going forward, and we save the planet. It's a win-win. Number four, college for all. If my dad didn't get a free college education, I'd still be an olive farmer in southeastern Turkey. And we didn't have any chance at all to make it. We had no hope at all. We were dirt poor. My family was back then. And my dad got a free college education. He became a mechanical engineer and has set up many businesses, both in Turkey and here in America. You know why? You know what that is? So funny enough, they could afford it in the 1960s in Turkey. And they're telling us the richest nation on earth, America, can't afford it? Preposterous. You know what that is? That's the American dream. And so the American dream is not supposed to be for the wealthy elite. It's supposed to be for all of us. It's supposed to be for your kids. So they say, I told you already that it's 5% of the Iraq war, and every time you mention college for all, they make it sound like it's the most expensive thing in the world. I just want to reinforce one quick thing. Have you ever seen any anchors when John Bolton or anyone else is threatening war with Iran or Venezuela? Forget the past. Iran or Venezuela right now, today. Do you ever see an anchor saying, how are you going to pay for that? No. Never asked once. But when it's your kids that's going to get a college education, all of a sudden they're lions. And all of a sudden, I have journalistic integrity. I will now berate any progressive candidate that dares to help your kids. But when it comes to war, they never ask it. Number 5, end the corruption. So it is a very specific request. It is an amendment to end the private financing of elections. It's pure logic. If private interests finance the politicians, they are going to work for private interests. If we have public financing of elections, they might work for the public interest. And of course, as usual, what will the media scream in unison? How are you going to pay for that? Okay, it is a tiny fraction of all of the things that I just discussed. It is a minuscule amount of money. Now, let me tell you what is really expensive. So between 2010 and 2015, 5-year period, top 200 companies that gave money into politics spent $5.8 billion. Now, if you ask people on TV, they say, oh, that's because they were doing that for charity. And they'll look at you and incredulously say, are you saying that Hillary Clinton or any other politician might have changed their votes because they got that money? Yes, that's what I'm saying, yes. Okay, so did they? Well, they spent $5.8 billion, and was it for charity, was it for their health, or did they get a return on investment? This is what they got in return. Those companies got $4.4 trillion in subsidies. My real question is, how are you going to pay for that? This system is the system that's broken. This system is the one that is too expensive. Our healthcare system is twice as expensive as every other industrialized world, every other country in the industrialized world. The real question is, how can we pay for the current, terribly bloated, expensive healthcare system in this country? How can we afford the terribly bloated, corrupt private financing of elections in this country? We can't, and we must change it. And in order to do that, you've got to call it by its name. It's called corruption. So I want to get to how we're going to enforce this pledge. But look, I'm also worried about the progressive candidates because I'm worried that they're too concerned about their colleagues. Look, Joe Manchin ain't going to vote for any of these things. You got to break him, and you got to say what he is. And whether it's him or any other corporate Democrats in Congress, you've got to also say it's not just Mitch McConnell, it's not just the Republicans. It is also the corporate Democrats that take that money and, yes, are corrupt. So what are we going to do with this pledge, and how are we going to make people abide by it? Because even if it's a progressive presidential candidate, and they win office, and they go, hey, congratulations to me and all of you guys who supported me, no, I'm not going to do it. No, we're not going to abide by that, okay? We are going to make them do it. So how? Okay, first step is super simple, and let me get to that. So we're first need to give, by the way, let me just, I hearken back to Obama for a second, because he said, well, when I get in office, just make me do it. Okay, I thought, si se puede. Yes, we can do that. But unfortunately, the reality is that we didn't. So we sat back down, congratulated ourselves for getting Obama elected, and we didn't make him do it. And so he didn't. We got warmed over Romney Care. Yeah, it was better than the current system, but it was only marginally better. We didn't get single payer. We didn't get any of the things that we were hoping for. We didn't get the real change that we were looking for. So this time around, we're not going to fall for that. And I'm sounding the siren for you guys right now. This election, 2020, is the mother lode. We have to make sure that we get these guys to do it. And nothing convinces politicians like power, okay? So here's what we're going to do. I want you to go to tyt.com/pledge. And so the very first thing you got to do is just sign it. It takes about 5 seconds. The more people that sign it, the more power that it has. So if 1,000 people sign it, great. If 10,000 sign it, better. 100,000, wait a minute. That's 100,000 voters who just said, I will not vote for you if you don't believe in these principles. Because I believe in these principles. This is what I stand for. My God, if you get that pledge up to 1 million people, that's going to get everybody's attention. Do you want 1 million votes or don't you want 1 million votes? So the first step is the easiest one in the world. You can do it now. You just go to tyt.com/pledge. Takes 5 seconds. Second step, also simple. There's share buttons at the bottom. Share it with your family. Share it with your friends. Get as many people to sign it as possible, because the more people sign it, the more that it has power, and the stronger that it gets. But now comes the interesting part. So we talked about how this is the army for the revolution. I want to activate you guys. And if you show up, I swear to God, we're going to change the system. But if we don't show up, the system's never going to change on its own. So what we're going to ask you to do is to actually go and ask the presidential candidates, they're first, but we got others coming up next, to sign the pledge. Now, is everybody going to sign the pledge? Do we even want everybody to sign the pledge? No, that's okay. I mean, in an ideal world, they would all sign it, but Klobuchar is going to look under her chair and find out that there's nothing. I would be shocked if she signed it. John Hickenlooper says that if you believe in Medicare for all, you're like Joseph Stalin. So he's not going to sign it. So That's okay. That's okay. And what we're going to do, this is an army of democracy and of truth. We're the good guys. This is not a Trump rally. We never do anything that is physical. We don't believe in any of that. If you do anything that is, like when Trump says, oh, knock him out, or et cetera, and I'll pay your bills. No, we're the exact opposite. You do anything physical, and we'll kick you out of the group, and we don't want anything to do with you. But we must match their corporate power with people power. So if only one person goes, you can still make an enormous amount of difference. In fact, I have a perfect example for you guys. It's a guy named John Beale. He was actually working for Rosa Calderon's campaign. She was a Justice Democrat. Now, she didn't win, so the press is like, haha, it's another Justice Democrat that didn't win, and leaves it at that. But no, John, you might not have heard of him, but he went to a Kamala Harris town hall and asked her about corporate PAC money. Do you take corporate PAC money, and are you going to stop? And she gave a snickering, snide answer and basically said, no, I'm going to keep on taking it. But you know what happened? Since that was on tape, people started talking about it, and she realized, ooh, that's not playing well. And just a couple of weeks later, she went on a radio show and said, oh, this guy asked me in a town hall, and you know what? I switched my position. I'm not taking corporate PAC money. So, look, those are the quiet heroes of the revolution, and that could be you guys. So, but imagine if instead of just one John Beale, 5 of you showed up, and you're wearing the same shirt or in a way that's identifiable. They're going to notice. Now imagine for a second, wherever there's a presidential debate, town hall, diner, any event, 50 of you show up. You know what that's going to do? That's going to rock their world. And you're going to say, hey, I got 50 people here. They're asking the simplest question in the world. Are you going to sign the pledge, or are you not going to sign the pledge? Look, we're not even asking you to sign the pledge. All we're asking is for an answer, because I want to know. My vote's on the line. These are the policies that I want. The media keeps telling me that you're on my team, so I'd like to know. It's the fairest request in the world. So, guys, I'm telling you, if it's just the people in this room, let alone the people watching, let alone the people that'll watch it later, if you all show up to these events, and we're going to show you how. You don't need to know how. Allison Hartz is in charge of the TYT Army. She's going to show you the way. So when you show up, you are going to get those results. But I got to tell you, you cannot do a revolution from your couch. So if you don't show up, they'll never be put to a decision. And the media will continue to say that Joe Biden and all the rest of the establishment candidates are progressives. They will continue to mislead the American people. They will continue to do those negative attacks. And that is not a good trajectory for this race right now. But you, literally you, can change the trajectory of this race and of this country by doing this very simple thing of simply going and asking them, are you on our side or are you not? If the media won't do its job in clarifying those positions, we will. So when you go to after you go to the pledge, the next page that pops up is going to ask you if you want to volunteer. You don't have to. You can just sign the pledge. Look, we only want you to do as much as you're comfortable with. I'd love for you to do more, but everybody's got a different life, and we understand. If you can do more, fantastic. So it's going to ask you, hey, do you want to just participate? Don't feel bad about that at all. Great, participate. That'll make all the difference. If you want to organize, you want to film the events, you want to do the different roles, fantastic. Sign up for that, and then we'll get right back to you, and we'll show you the way, and we'll show you how to do it, and we'll take the power back. Look, I remember, any of you saw the movie Mad as Hell About Us that Andrew Napier did? And it was a really interesting documentary, and I learned a lot about myself there. And I remember this one scene, and my dad and I are talking about corruption and money and politics. This is a long time ago, back in 2011. And he says, yeah, but Cenk, who is going to fix that? And I raised my hand, and I said, me. Now, and after Trump won, on that night, when we were talking about how terrible the Democratic Party has become, how they've lost 1,000 seats all across the country, and how they just lost to a monster buffoon like Donald Trump. And I remember one of the other hosts asked, who's going to fix that? And I immediately raised my hand and said, me. I'm going to fix it. Now, why? Why? Do I have an ego like Donald Trump? I alone can fix it? Hell no, okay? Do I think I'm uniquely qualified? No. No, I raised my hand because I wanted to set an example. When anyone asks you who's going to fix that, you raise your hand, okay? In fact, let's do it right now. I'm going to ask you who's going to fix it. You're going to say me. Ready? Who's going to fix it? Me. Who's going to fix it? Me. Who's going to fix it? Me. Damn right. We're going to go out there. In fact, that is why we ask you to stay and go to Cedar Rapids with us tomorrow. Now, as luck would have it, 19 presidential candidates are one town over tomorrow. So, you know who's going to show you how to ask him to take the pledge first? Me, okay? So I'm gonna go with you guys. If you go to Cedar Rapids, I will meet every single person that goes to Cedar Rapids, okay? And no matter how long it takes, I'll make sure that I meet with you guys and get to know you, okay? And we're gonna meet some of those candidates. We probably won't get them all, but we'll probably get some. And we'll ask them, hey, listen, it's early. We just want you to see the pledge, and can you get back to us a week from now? Because they haven't seen it yet, right? And I'm gonna tell you who has seen it and who's already signed it. So that's gonna be a fun surprise at the end. So can you please give us a promise that your campaign will get back to us in a week and tell us whether you're gonna sign or not sign. We're gonna do it together. Now, look, there's about 500 people in here, right? Even if half of you come, do you have any idea how much that'll shock them? When a couple hundred people show up, they will not see that coming. And so we want to get them on the record. It's a wonderful opportunity. One housekeeping thing here. If you've already figured out how to get there because you saw the videos, fantastic. If you haven't figured out how to get to Cedar Rapids and you'd like to go, or most importantly, if you have a car that is not full, stay seated after the speech. We're going to come talk to you guys. We're going to work together. We're going to organize together. We're going to fight together, and we're going to fix it together, okay? So look, guys, I think some of the presidential candidates are going to sign it fairly quickly. I'd be pretty surprised if a whole host of them didn't sign, and probably, as I said, expeditiously. And so that's great, and a lot of them won't sign. There's nothing wrong with that. But once we're done with the presidential candidates, we're going to do two more things, actually several more things. Then we're going to go to congressional offices, and we're going to ask them to sign. So every media person I've ever met says, why are you yelling at Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer? They're on your side. Well, they didn't sign the pledge. They didn't sign the pledge, and if they don't sign the pledge, then I guess they're not on my side. And guys, look, a lot of it will be really easy. A lot of it is checking off boxes and just showing up. But the hard time will be when people yell at you and say, like, oh, why are you doing this? This is outrageous. How can you demand purity tests? Well, you just tell them, hey, brother, I don't know about you, but I believe in democracy. These are the things that I want, and I'm your constituent. And if you don't want to give it to me, then I'm going to vote you out. And that's how democracy works. And if you don't like it, you can go ahead and cry about it. But we're coming for you. We're coming for you. Justice Democrats are going to run primaries again, okay? Justice is coming. So if you're a corporate Democrat that did not want to hold Republicans accountable, if you're a corporate Democrat that does not want to do any of these progressive policy positions, that's fine. I just don't want you to cry when we come for you, okay? If you say you're against us, no problem, we got a deal. Then I'm against you, okay? We are going to get clarity come hell or high water. We are going to get clarity. Look, we'll even teach you how to eventually go to the media and ask for this clarity and ask them to actually do some journalism instead of kowtowing to the right wing, kowtowing to corporations nonstop. But one other thing, a lot of you are in different progressive organizations. Ask them to sign it as well. So say, right? And look, a lot of wonderful groups there. And so I'd be surprised if they didn't want to sign. But let's get this ball rolling because you guys are the tip of the spear. And when we win on these issues, God, you have no idea how good it's going to feel. I remember when Allison got money out of politics resolution passed in California. She was a state leader at the time. And she called me and she said, Cenk, it feels so good to get the power back. The power should be in your hands. It's supposed to be a democracy. Don't ever feel embarrassed or ashamed to ask your representatives to do what you want. They're supposed to represent you. That's why they're called representatives. We're going to get the power back. We're going to get the power back. If you got presidential candidates to sign that pledge, and if you got politicians to sign that pledge, and you held them accountable, on the day that they pass Medicare for All, do you have any idea how good you're going to feel? The day that when they pass that amendment to end the corruption in this country, you get to say, I did that. I did that. I didn't wait for a cavalry. I didn't wait for a knight in shining armor. I didn't wait for any politicians. I did that. And so when I ask you who's going to fix it? Who's going to fix it? Who's going to fix it? God damn right. So, before I tell you who signed the pledge and finish tonight, I saw this article just 2 days ago on U.S. News and World Report. It was entitled, How the Revolution Ends. And it was a celebratory article, certainly the framing of it was, going, ha ha, Bernie Sanders is going down in the polls. And we told you he was unlikable. We told you they were going to go with the status quo, ha ha. And this is how your revolution ends. I cannot wait to show that article on election night. Dewey defeats Truman. So guys, are you going to let the revolution end on this cycle? No, let's do it this way. I say hell, you say no. Hell! 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 We are not going to let the revolution end. We are not going to let the media talk us out of it. We are not going to let the corporate Democrats talk us out of it. And we're certainly not going to let the Republicans stop us. The mainstream media tells me every day, hey, if you want to beat Donald Trump, and man, I want to beat Donald Trump, they say, you've got to have someone electable. Perfect. I agree. I 100% agree. They say the person who's electable is Joe Biden, who has the same exact positions, as Hillary Clinton. Wait a minute. Am I the crazy one? Isn't she the one that lost to Donald Trump? And so, look, I'm not trying to take it out on her. She's in the woods, okay? And bless her heart. Look, it's not about that. But I don't want to make the same mistake again. And I don't want to be led into that trap. So they keep telling you, don't go with the candidate that 3/4 of Americans agree with on the policy positions. Instead, go with the candidate that's identical to the one that lost to Donald Trump. I say hell. 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 Damn right. So, one more thing about the Republicans. Look, we're not going to lose to Donald Trump. We're not going to lose to Donald Trump. We're going to beat him, and we're going to beat him merciless, okay? That guy bankrupted himself 6 different times, and together, we're going to make it 7. I'll be damned if we lose to Donald Trump. And if we're going to beat Donald Trump, we need someone who agrees with the rest of the country and is going to get them higher wages and health care and jobs. And for God's sake, when Joe Biden says that he is going to go and talk to the Republicans and persuade them, are you kidding me? No, Mitch McConnell is unpersuadable. The only thing that persuades Mitch McConnell is cold, hard cash. He is the most corrupt man in America. When it comes to money in politics, he is the heart of darkness. We're not going to negotiate with Mitch McConnell. We're going to end him. We're not here to work with Republicans. We're here to defeat them. For once, together, we are going to stand up for each other. So, look, I want you to stand up for yourselves. I want you to stand up for all the people that came before you. Let me tell you a quick story about that. Freedom riders during the Civil Rights Movement, they got into buses, black, white, Jewish, Christian, etc. They got into buses and they rode to the middle of the South, the heart of the South, and during terribly racist times. And when they would get off in the middle of the night in Mississippi, the Klan would be waiting for them. Do you have any idea what kind of courage that takes? And we're asking you to just show up. I mean, those guys, all those ancestors that we have that fought so bravely for the freedoms that we have, not just in the battlefield, but also in the battlefield of civil rights and politics and women's rights. God, they said it was impossible to get women the right to vote. How could they get the right to vote when they didn't already have the right to vote? That's impossible. And they did it. And they were spat upon, and they were hit, and they were berated, and they were mocked. And those women had courage. They had courage. When someone asked them, who's going to fix it, they said, me. And I'm trying to imagine what it feels like to be a black man in the early 1960s, getting off a bus where you know the Klan is waiting for you in the middle of the night. What we're asking you to do is nothing compared to that. So for generations past, stand up. Stand up for all the sacrifice they made for you. And some of those folks sacrificed with their lives. So it's not too much what we're asking for you. We're also asking you to stand up for democracy, stand up for America, and also stand up for the people right next to you. Stand up for your neighbors. Stand up for your colleagues, your coworkers, your family, your friends. Because the number one lie that the powerful tell you is that it's not possible, that change is not possible. Real change, big change is not possible. Don't believe that lie. Because if you believe that lie, they'll lull you into sleep, they'll lull you into false complacency, and then we won't ever get change. But I'm guaranteeing it right now, if you stand up, we win. We win. So, I I didn't want to unveil the pledge until I told you guys, right? So a lot of people in the press asked, and I said, no, I got to tell the folks who drove all the way here from all the different places in the world. But right before the speech earlier today, I went and contacted some people and showed them the pledge and see if they wanted to sign. So let me tell you some folks who've signed the pledge already on day one. Ro Khanna. That guy's a champion. I remember when he came on the Young Turks, and he was going to be the first Justice Democrat ever. And I asked him, will you be our champion? And he said yes. And he has followed through every single time. By the way, who's the only one in Congress that actually got any Americans higher wages? Ro Khanna and Bernie Sanders. So, Ro's on board. Justice Democrats. Progressive Change Campaign Committee, PCCC, they're in. And then right before I came on, I got a message. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. By the way, you did that. When we talked about ending some of the most powerful Democratic leadership, you know who fixed it? You did. So a lot of you volunteered for her, a lot of you donated to her, and you made that possible. We're going to do it again and again and again. And the media, they can't understand why she's so popular, why she's such a champion for American people. It doesn't have anything to do with being charming or any of those things. She's perfectly charming. There's a lot of charming people. No, as always, they're over-focused on superficiality. She's that popular because she fights for us. So, guys, we're going to do this together. And when we win, I swear to you, when they ask you many, many years later, what's the best feeling you ever had? You're not going to talk about something related to money. You're not going to talk about anything like that. You're going to say, when I got the politicians to do what I wanted, when we got democracy back, and it was me that did it. It's going to be the greatest feeling you ever had. So, in conclusion, I would like to ask you, who's going to fix it? 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 Thank you.